Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me this week, we have Logan Wilkinson. How you doing, Logan?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. And Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on?
What is going on? Today, we're going to be talking about Star Wars Visions Volume 2, specifically episodes Sith, Screecher's Reach, and In the Stars. Back when Volume 1 came out, we did a similar kind of thing where we kind of broke out that season of 9 episodes into 3-episode stints. So we'll do kind of the same thing this week, and for the next couple weeks, we're going to kind of have Volume 2, Part 1 today, and then Part 2 next week, Part 3 after that. Why do we pick this? Because May the 4th be with you. We're recording
and also
this.
With you.
There you go. And also with you. We are recording that this on the day that these episodes came out, May the 4th. You'll have the Revenge of the 5th tomorrow to enjoy this, I guess. So yeah, we're going to talk about those first few episodes. The episode. Excuse me. The episodes have a runtime of about 15 to 20 minutes across all 9 of the episodes this season. In the Star Wars animated timeline of things, we had Star Wars Visions Volume 1 all the way back September 22nd, 2021. Then after that, we had Tales of the Jedi, October 26th, 2022. Then we had the very brief Zen, Grogu and Dust Bunnies, 3-minute Studio Ghibli short.
It was something like that, yeah.
November 12th of 2022. The Bad Batch Season 2 came out earlier this year, January 4th through March 29th, 2023. Young Jedi Adventures shorts came out over the last month and change, March 27th to April 24th. And then today we have Star Wars Visions Volume 2, as well as Young Jedi Adventures Season 1, all dropped today, May 4th, 2023, as part of Star Wars Day. And then kind of up next in the animated slate, you have the final season of The Bad Batch will be coming sometime in 2024, as well as a season 2 of Tales of the Jedi. And that, I believe, is what we know about so far.
It's wild how many, it's when you run through it like that, and that's all, everything you just ran through is less than 2 years of how much Star Wars stuff we've had.
And that's just the animated stuff.
Yep. Right, exactly right. And it's just like, wow, okay, we're in a very weird era of Star Wars, right? I saw Kathleen Kennedy had this quote pull of she's wanting to make the movie events feel special. Her exact phrase is apparently I want to make them feel like James Bond events. And it's well, first off, we don't need to wait every 6 years for a movie. We can have some sort of in-between space here. We don't need to have that long of a gap. But yeah, it is just a very odd time of how much they've transitioned and double and tripled down on TV and kept quiet on movies in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I feel like the pendulum keeps swinging back one way or the other.
Wildly,
and very much was okay, on the movie side of
people
things,
didn't like Rise of Skywalker or Last Jedi. Let's step away, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they had announced so many movies, the Rogue One movie seems to not be happening anymore. The guys who did Game of Thrones had a trilogy that they were slated for that seems to have been canceled. So I believe on the movie front, there's still the Taika Waititi movie, trilogy, maybe. I think it's just a single one for Taika Waititi. There's still, I think, a Rian Johnson trilogy out there.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Allegedly, right? Yeah.
And then from the recent celebration, they did announce Dave Filoni is going to have a movie to kind of wrap up all of the Filoni-verse Mandalorian live action stuff. And then I think there was at least one other. Oh yeah, I mean there was a super old Republic movie I think that they identified, and then the new movie that's going to be 30 years in the future after Rise of Skywalker with Rey leading a new Jedi Order, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see because we've kind of heard this a little bit before now, how many of those actually come to fruition?
Right, how many stick?
And if they start pulling back, it seems like the streaming wars are reaching a point where a lot of stuff is like getting culled, and they're not pouring as much money and resources into coming up with show after show after show. But we'll see. Yeah. Because we do still have a lot of live action stuff ahead of us too. So for each of these episodes, the 3 that we're going to be talking about today, because the episodes just came out today and they're also very short things, I don't have a lot in the way of like trivia and some of the other segments that we do. So we're just going to kind of talk about some of the stuff on one, and then talk about our thoughts on one, and then kind of talk about the little segments that we have for the second one, and kind of go back and forth with that. So on this first one, Sith is the one that launches us. The director of Sith was Rodrigo Blas, and it is produced by El Guiri Studios from Madrid, Spain. If you are unfamiliar, in Volume 1 of Visions, everything was Japanese anime studios. And for Volume 2, they went with a far more global approach. So each studio is like from different regions. Like today, like here, Madrid, Spain. El Guiri, some of the projects they've worked on in the past are Alma and One Morning. The writer for Sith was also Rodrigo Blas. And the little 2-person cast in this one, we had Ursula Corbero as Lola and Luis Tosar as the Sith Master. So what did everybody think of Sith, the one that kicks us off here? Logan, I'll throw it to you first.
I think it is interesting. We talked a little bit about this, I feel like more in depth when we did Tales of the Jedi. I think possibly because the first Visions, we were just sort of like so enamored by what it was. But 15 minutes is a real hard time to tell a story in, right? And I think, Sith is maybe the one of the 3 that I sort of think is both the most promising in terms of like its overarching story, and also the one that I feel like is sort of undone the most by how much it is trying to do in such a short period of time. I would have loved this to be way longer and gotten more of her backstory with, the Sith Master and just that whole arc, right? And then like kind of carry forward there. And like what we get is really interesting. I think it's by far the most visually unique of the art styles of the 3. And one that I like feel like every 20 seconds I was like, I like this, I don't like this, I like this, I don't like this. And I kept going back and forth and couldn't kind of make up my mind on it. It's so unlike anything else though, and I love how visually distinct it is. In terms of the overarching, narrative, like I am constantly surprised at how Lucasfilm and Star Wars universe and anything involved in Star Wars finds new fun ways for us to fall in love with a great droid, right? Like it is crazy how like they just keep doing it. It seems like it should be hard and like, we've done them all, but like that droid in the 15 minutes we saw him, I really loved. And just the dynamic it had with Lola and her whole arc, and like it had very like unfinished Swan vibes to it in some ways of like the like paint and how it kind of incorporated that, which I know as someone who really loves Unfinished Swan, I really loved. And yeah, like I think it is the most, intriguing and promising of the 3. And if it doesn't quite live up to maybe what it's trying to build in the short period of time, I think it's still really fun and interesting and has a great baddie. Like that guy looks like he stepped right out of like a proper Star Wars AAA, like big budget, video game in terms of like that Sith Master villain. And his design is so cool. And so, yeah, I thought it was really good. I would say I wasn't like floored by it, but I definitely liked it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was very interesting. Like in the volume 1, like the first one really came out with like a splash of like it was the black and white with like just hints of color, like the red lightsaber, little blues and greens on the droids and stuff like that. And so yeah, this one kind of starting with a similar, like, we're going to give you a visual look that you haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Was really cool. And I loved kind of the introduction we got to it of like the white corridors with the paint kind of splattered around things, and then kind of going out into the world. And then we get that turn when like the Sith show up and it goes into like the oranges and yellows and reds, like as she rushes back to the planet, or her base rather, which then sets up like her yellow bladed lightsaber mixed with like the cool badass like dual blade katana vibe that which makes for a fun reveal. It's very interesting because I found myself thinking back on that first like Ronin one here because it was like those reveals made for cool, like somehow unexpected vibes. Like I had seen, I think probably from both the image that they kind of used for that episode, as well as like the trailer and stuff, I'd seen the yellow katana blade. So when it became like a dual bladed thing, I was like, oh, I wasn't even expecting it to do that. That's awesome. And then, yeah, I think the droid E2 was a ton of fun. The little ball droid and kind of like, quirky droid stuff, and then like busts out like a Death Star laser that blasts a droid's helmet off or something, or I don't know. I'm pretty sure that was like a droid bounty hunter kind of thing with the Sith, or just decapitated him. But yeah, that was.
It melted his head right off. Yeah,
it blasts the head.
It blasted. Yeah, blasted it off.
So yeah, I agree though with like it is I like this, but it's such an abbreviated story that I almost wanted more time to breathe with it. But at the same time, like it is a showcase, I think, for the visuals that the studio was really putting forth. So like it was a hell of a way to like start my evening of just like, oh, like this is really cool. Like, let's see, I wrote very cool art style. Damn, it's a beauty. The shift to the oranges and reds. Fucking dual bladed katana, dope as hell. Cool ship design. I like the ship that she like sails away out from, and then like the final mural that we get of like her holding the lightsaber, or the fist holding the dual bladed lightsaber, embracing the light and the dark, and kind
the
of
yellow
the
and the red on it.
Yeah. So yeah, like half of my notes on this one were just like, I love how this looks. Cam, how about your thoughts?
I really enjoyed it. I don't agree with Logan that I think this would have been better if it was longer. I think that there's a lot of slow points in the beginning that I think if it was longer, it would have dominated more of the length of it. And I will be honest, I was coming into this, I'm like very apprehensive because I was like, man, I really don't know what a Western style would look like. And I think these three right off the bat between El Guiri, Cartoon Saloon, and Punkrobot really changed my kind of like anticipation attitude about it. I'm very excited to see what we get going forward. But that being said, this one in particular, I was like, they're really going to be focusing on the color palettes and things like that. And that like as a like, it's just not a particular interest of mine. Although, and I was like, I'm really not feeling this. Like, I'm like, it feels like it's being very high brow artistic, and it's kind of like representation of color. It isn't until action starts happening. And I don't mean like action as in like fight, like the fighting. I mean, once actual motion and locomotion and like things are actually being moved around. And it's not just bubbles of color going places. It actually is like real things of like, whether it's the speeder like that. I'd love the speeder that she has. It's that, that oscillating wheel from like Clone Wars era.
Clones. Yeah.
And it has like a cool distinct feel to it where like she rides it where it's like leaning out as she's riding on it, but the oscillating wheel still going straight up.
Yeah, like she drifts and starts shooting at the guy.
Oh, when that happens, I was like, that's so awesome, because I was like, does that thing have weapons on it? And I'm like, because normally if you've ever played any of the old Battlefield games, they have two blasters on the front of it. And for her to actually be like, no, the blaster's like hidden back here and I fire them manually. I'm like, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's great.
It was awesome. I really, really enjoyed the droid that she has.
Yeah.
I love that they gave emphasis to how droids access doors where they can't access the top panel. There's like a little bottom panel that they can like scan, and then get in that way. I was like, okay, I've never seen like a Star Wars product focus on that, and that was really cool. Just like momentary thing.
Makes way more sense for the mouse droids.
Yeah, it does, 100%. I really enjoyed once actual motion was happening. I was like, when she forgot her lightsaber back there, I was like, because it was blocking her from getting under. I was like, oh, that's gonna come up later.
Yeah. I love that. Like, I went back and like rewatched it to make sure she didn't grab it as she left. Like I saw it come off and I was like, oh, did they have her put it back? Because I was expecting a moment of like her, like either she doesn't and they pan down and focus that it's
that's
still
what
there.
I thought they were going to do too. Yeah.
And so when they don't and it just comes up and she goes to reach for it later and they are respecting the audience paid attention and saw that like she just kind of set it aside offhanded. I really appreciated that.
When that happened, I was like, they didn't draw focus to it, but I can see they're showing her full profile and she doesn't have it on. Are they just going to be like, actually she had it on the entire time? But no, they stay true to the continuity of what they've already established. And it was so well done. The character design from the droid bounty hunters to the master to herself and her droid, like the style of the speeder and her ship later, like you pointed out, Trevor, just so awesome. And I loved how she's like examining and she goes, this wasn't a meteorite. Like this is a straight cut through. And then you just see him like show up. And he reminded me a lot of one of the judges from Final Fantasy 12 with his like back kind of horned look with the mask covering it. Reminded me of sorry, no, not from Final Fantasy 12, from Final Fantasy 14, the main bad guy in Realm Reborn. His mask looked very similar to that. I was like, I like this a lot. It looks very cool.
Yeah.
I loved his lightsaber, it resembled a longsword.
Yeah.
In particular, like a European longsword, even with the way that it's so futuristic and Star Warsy with the way the handles are set up, and the way the hilt is set up for them. But at the same time, it feels unique to the style of the saber that's going to be coming out of it. I don't know, I think it's cool that they didn't go straight for like the katana look for it. I felt like it could have also been a scimitar or a falchion, like something more European, especially because Guiri is a Spanish-based studio. They could have easily gone to Spain, like through Spanish history. Little tidbit for for people to learn about me. I love swords, obviously. I don't have any like behind me or anything, but like I do love swords, and the history of Spain, because of its unique history of North African rulership, Middle Eastern rulership, European rulership, and its own unique identity. They have a very like unique history of swordplay in Spain. That's very fascinating. And like even Roman occupation. And so like it could easily have been like 3 different kinds of swords that would have fit, because it's like, yeah, that's cool. Or it could just be a katana, and that's awesome too. And I love that it was, that for me, it was open to a little bit of interpretation, but I feel like what was really cool is the double-sided aspect of it, because the double-sided aspect of it was they're reversed on the sides. And it reminded me of like the swallow blade from Chrono Cross a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it once there was actually like action happening. The jetpacks of the droids maneuvering through and flying through, and like the way the color clashed through action and how that was highlighted out through that. I just like, okay, I was not on board when it was just like floating bubbles of color going around. Like I was not that impressed by it, but seeing it in action, I was really blown away by it. And I thought it was, and once again, it's a perfect companion look to the parallels between the Ronin and Sith. Seeing these parallel of these 3D animation styles being done in a particular way. Ronin, of course, being done in a Kurosawa kind of old school samurai look to it versus this very more, like I said, highbrow kind of like nuanced way of doing motion and color, and kind of like it's a very new age versus very old style. And I think they're really perfect companion pieces because it's dealing with like the idea of not the idea of Jedi or the Force, but rather Sith and their place in the Force.
Just to clarify, the first episode of the
Was the
volume
duel,
one
right?
was the duel. Yeah.
The duel. I'm sorry.
No,
Ronan-
I introduced Ronan into it because he was very much like a Ronan type of character.
For people who don't know, the novel that is based off of that character that is out is called Ronan. So that's my mistake as well.
Did they make
when you pointed that, I was like, oh, that's right. The book's called Ronan. I know because I have it on a bookshelf. It's cool. I loved it.
Yeah. I'm just a fan of the concept of the episode in general, of like a Sith has walked away from being a Sith and is just trying to live a peaceful life in isolation, with the robo arm being a painter. Like, I was like, that's a fun, interesting take on, like, not all Sith have to be, I just want the end of everything kind of thing. People do, like, the idea of people walking away from the Sith in the way we've seen characters walking away from the Jedi was like a cool, interesting idea.
It was. I also enjoyed how that she became the master, and he told her, "You're the master now," and she made a point at the very end to be like, "Just because I'm now the master doesn't mean I have to be the kind of person that he was." And so it's kind of brings up this idea of like the Sith code, and everything around about the Sith is about breaking chains and breaking free from the idea of order. And it's a really cool interpretation to see her idea being, I'm going to be a master of balance and the master of bold.
Going to be a master of my own destiny.
Yeah, master of my own destiny, the way she puts it at the end, is fantastic. You'll love to see it.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot in that episode too that is very like Last Jedi onwards Star Wars in terms of like having like a yellow lightsaber and having like its whole thing of like this in between like the Sith and the Jedi, and that like Dave Filoni has kind of dabbled with it a little bit too, but like Rian Johnson introducing Last Jedi, and like it feels like a very like postmodern Star Wars kind of inspired story as well, in like a really interesting way. And like that whole like again like I think part of why I'm just like, I want that to be longer is because I found her so interesting and I just wanted to spend more time with her as a character, right? Like, I think, especially like what she was in the past and then like what she's going to be now, like, I think just a really interesting arc and a really engaging character. And I think Last Jedi is 2017, I think, right? Like, it's been a lot of years. But it sort of feels like it's almost in like a vacuum sealed container, like Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. We don't really talk about these two movies. And so like, it's interesting to see something sort of embrace it, even if it's not canon, embrace it and do stuff with it and kind of experiment with it in a way that isn't Dave Filoni, because I have all my issues with his shit. And so it's like, just a really like refreshing, in a very nice, again, we don't need to get into it, but like in a very nice way, like Dave Filoni's Star Wars stories, I think are just not for me, right? In a lot of ways, like I just think they're just a little bit too, I think, like fan boy. I love this thing, and like I just want to play with the toys in my toy kit kind of thing. And if it doesn't make sense with canon, then we'll make it make sense kind of thing. Versus like this just feels like a very authentic kind of refreshing version of that kind of story. So yeah, I thought it was great. And it's like one of the perks of having these stories not be bound by canon or, history or the Star Wars kind of stories before it.
Yeah. Nice little anthology stuff.
Yeah.
So moving on to the second episode, Screecher's Reach. This was directed by Paul Young and the team behind Cartoon Saloon. They are based out of Kilkenny, Ireland. They are Academy Award nominated for their films, their animated films, The Song of the Sea, The Breadwinner, and Wolfwalkers. One of those, like, they get nominated a lot against Disney eventual winners
Pixar,
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they also worked on the, I believe, Netflix film My Father's Dragon and The Secret of the Kells.
Yes, Secret of the Kells is actually like a low key, like really love it. Like I love that movie. It's really, really good.
Nice. And Screecher's Reach was written by Will Collins and Jason Tamimagi. The cast is Eva Whitaker as Doll, Alex Connolly as Bathon, Noah Rafferty as Quinn, Molly McCann as Kina, The one like named
Yeah, I
name
was gonna say.
of any of these three episodes at least, Angelica Houston playing the Sith mother at the
Yeah.
end, Academy Award winner for Pritzi's Honor. Of course, she was Morticia Adams
Adams.
in the Addams
Yeah.
Family films back in the 90s.
Never forget.
She's also the stepmother in Ever After a Cinderella Story and a Wes Anderson staple
Yes.
performer. And then lastly, gonna guess is probably an Irish name, so I'm probably gonna be terribly wrong with it. But I'm gonna guess Nima Moyles does the voice of the ghost. Yeah. What did we think of this one, Cameron? I'll throw it to you first for this one.
I loved it. I was like really interested to see how it was going to start because it starts literally off with like child labor. Very and also like multicultural, multiracial child labor. It's like this child labor sweatshop factory like is not prejudiced whatsoever. They will take whatever work they can get. And I thought it was so interesting to see how like everybody's work comes together and then like one person gets pissed off because their thing breaks and walks off. And I was like, okay. And then it completely takes off for a different kind of story than I thought we were going to be in for. Fantastic. I loved it. I loved the little characters. They all endeared themselves to me very, very quickly. Whether it was Bathan's like care and consideration for everybody. And him like his being like if you see your chance to go. Like you have been the one dreaming for something greater than this. Like go. Whether it's Quinn and Keenan Quinn, I believe his little boy who is just an absolute doofus and is obviously the one most hurt by Doll at the end. And then of course Keena broke my heart so many times. I love this little girl so much. And then Doll being like, and it's like that pendant everybody's expecting, and then like the twist, like what a twist at the end. An absolute baller twist at the end where it's like trust in the Force, and it's like so she's Force sensitive for sure, we know that. But then what does she do at the end? She uses the lightsaber against the witch, the ghost. It's so good. It's so good on so many levels. The way that she realizes, oh, it's just a person, and this person's scared, and so she is scared, and it's so good. And then at the very end, just holy crap. Sith mother coming in, Angelica Houston just absolutely owning that scene, like speaking through the pendant, and you're like, oh, somebody's been talking back. That's the scary thing. And then her design is immaculate. Oh my gosh, her design is incredible. So great. And by the way, the final scene of her looking back at her friends and it closing in around her eye. Perfect. It's so great. Cartoon Saloon did such an amazing job with this. Paul Young and everyone did such a great job. I cannot believe I'm like, oh, well, I guess, I'm waiting for the second one. And then it's like the second one blew me away. I was like, oh my gosh. Okay.
Nice.
So, yeah.
It was like, because I'd started working on the doc before watching them, because I was trying to give myself as much time as I could. The idea that like there was a Sith mother in this had like already been especially because I was like, that's the one name I recognize. So it was like a reveal I ended up seeing coming because of that, but it was still like I loved how it is like preying on the disenfranchised and like giving this kid all the tools, all the power they need to then like take them under their wing. Right. And it's not the typical Sith relationship we're used to seeing. It is more of like a Jedi relationship, but also a like very twisted version of that kind of story.
Right.
I really loved the wide shots in this. I thought those were like those for the animation style of this, like big, grand like landscape, and we just see like the few like our four little characters kind of like walking across the land, or seeing the stars above them and all that kind of stuff. I thought that was a lot of cool stuff. Screecher definitely lives up to its name. That was a note I took. But I also the eerie singing that like, and the haunting melodies and stuff that we get in the cavern, and then also kind of closing out the episode, were the first time I really took note of like the soundscape of these things instead of just the animation. I think the animation is like the showcase for each of these, but this one kind of went above and beyond and did, weirdly, much like the second episode of the first season 2, that was like the, you know, rock band kind of group. It's like it's interesting seeing like, oh, like I'm really honing in on the musicality of this one too. Obviously, very very different music styles, but yeah, and the ship design of the Sith Mother's ship was another like very sexy, like haunting, sleek, butterfly-esque kind of thing coming in. That was just, really cool. Logan, what'd you think of this one?
Yeah, I think, you know, the Irish in me always loves some Irish representation. Shout out to that. I think that, I mean, Trevor took kind of one of the things I was going to talk about, which is like the shots and the way, like, I think a lot of the scenes are sort of framed and set up. You know, I think it was so weird too. Like, I don't know how I would have had it spoiled for me. I didn't have it spoiled for me, I guess, but like going into this, I was like, I remember literally when I sat down this morning to watch, I was like, wouldn't it be weird if like for once we had like a reveal in Star Wars and it was like the person was the bad guy, and then like the second episode of the thing is like that, and it's like, oh, that's like, I like was so bizarre. I had that thought and then like watched the thing. And so like I'm apparently psychic. I'm this generation's That's So Raven. But yeah, like I think it was, you know, one that I think I like it a little bit less than Cameron, who I think is more gung ho on it than I am. But I really enjoy it, right? Like I think this is one that I think does really cool, tiny world building details, right? Like the fact that we do get this like setup at the beginning in like a child labor camp. It's just like not a necessary detail, but sort of a cool one, right? And I sort of like what it does in, to your point, Trevor, sort of being a like Sith reflection of a story we've known before, right? Of like, you know, finding this hero who has like nothing really here, but who has this gift, who has these abilities, and instead of corralling them into being, you know, I'm just a regular farm boy on Tatooine and now I save the galaxy, it's getting like channeled into a different direction, a different outlet, and potentially something much more sinister down the line, right? And I think, you know, it's really interesting from that point of view, and also probably, how it would be done, right? Like, I don't imagine, you know, Emperor Palpatine walks up and says, I'm going to make you evil as his sales pitch to people, right? Like, it is, you know, given a voice to the voiceless and letting that empower them and letting that instill like confidence in them, and then kind of using that to your own ability. And I thought it was really interesting, right? I mean, really, all 3 episodes of Star Wars Vision for that we've kind of get in this little bucket where we're doing the episode on, I think are really fun because they're sort of acknowledging the history of Star Wars in a really interesting way and like doing stuff off that, whether it is sort of this like duality between light and dark in the first episode, or sort of like this like sinister reflection of like the hero's journey that Luke goes on, except for done bad here, right? And so I actually like the fact that, you know, they're letting these creators do these kind of self-aware Star Wars stories that acknowledge Star Wars, you know, what, almost 50-year history, but do really fun things off it. And I think this one does that in a really engaging way with like kind of the classic hero's journey. I enjoyed that.
It like the idea of like, oh, they're kind of like slave labor, and then they go off on adventure with like the kid and their friends with you know, not pod racers, but like land speeders, right. Basically. It is like this is like a dark version of Anakin's journey kind of thing, right. in Phantom Menace.
So many heroes' journey, right? Like we've seen a lot of the Jedi picking up the youngling, or the Jedi picking up a young kid. It is very similar to this, right? It is someone who doesn't have anything keeping them there, but has abilities and is promising, right? And is sort of a natural leader. And then, you know, they go to the good guys, and it's like, well, the bad guys probably learned that lesson plan too, right? They probably also took a page out of that book and were like, well, we can do that same thing. And then we're gonna do bad stuff.
Indeed. Any final thoughts on this one before we move on to our last episode? No,
Cameron, you're the one who loves it.
I'll take that.
Yeah, I think I said everything I needed to say about it. So
cool.
Here we go.
Then our last episode for this week is In the Stars.
Yes.
This one from Gabriel Osorio Vargas and Punkrobot Studio, based out of Santiago, Chile. Their other projects include Bear Story, Nahuel and the Magic Book, and I Am Little Red. Gabriel Osorio Vargas, Antonio Herrera, and Francisco Ortega were the writers on that one, and it features Valentina Mur as Cotin, Julia Oviedo as Ticina, and Katie Dickey as the officer. I'll start with this one. This I really appreciated the claymation style that we get, but then immediately also we go into a 2D, here's the backstory of this planet, and here's all of the people have died, and here's the empire coming in, all this stuff. Knowing, and this will be kind of like a tease for next week, the next episode, I believe, is the Wallace and Gromit studio, Aardman. It's their stripe. So I was like, oh, cool. We get this kind of, other claymation stop motion style on this one as well, and I love that this one you could feel that in the design in moments of you can just the way this is shot, I can tell those are just very small maquettes probably or something like that. And I really enjoyed the different perspectives that we got of that. Obviously close-ups, there are certainly a lot more detail on these figures and stuff like that, but then in some of the wide shots it is just it's almost Robot Chicken of they probably, especially when we get to some of the stormtroopers later on, it's they probably just had stormtrooper figures or something like that and distressed them a little bit and played with them, but I could very easily see that being at some point in time toy AT-AT or ATST in being used in a very cool way. I didn't like the girl at first. I'm never a fan of the precocious girl who doesn't do what she's told and then just lucks out.
Who outright is just it'll work this time, and it's when everybody is telling you, hey, you're wasting important things and you're doing something you're not supposed to. And yes, nail on the
stay
head.
Here because you will die. Oh, she didn't stay, and she immediately gets caught.
Literally, girl says, I'm gonna do what I do every single time. I'm gonna go up, I'm gonna get our water, I'm gonna come back, and things are gonna be fine.
Yeah.
And the little girl goes, no, we can fight him. It's nobody's saying we're going up and fighting anybody. There's no plan of attack on this. And then it's okay, she's getting her out, and then she goes, I'm sorry, I gotta do this. And she goes down, and she goes, and it's I'm just so frustrated by this kid. I'm so frustrated by this kid.
So all
I
that
hate this
said,
kid so much.
I end up really liking that the sister
Yes.
has the suppressed force ability and
Yes.
hasn't been embracing it or whatever, and so is able to, and at a certain point I can see that that's where the story is going. I mean, probably, if not sooner, then definitely when the little girl is being held over the edge. I don't imagine they're going to drop a little girl and to her doom. I figure somebody's going to come in and save the day. So
I mean, couldn't they though? Couldn't they just let her?
I wouldn't have been mad if they did, but I would have been very surprised because that would go against kind of the oeuvre of Star Wars. So when the older sister is coming in and beating the crap out of everybody with her staff, it's okay, this is obviously going to culminate with the girl being out of reach and her using the force to save her, a la what we most recently saw, that same move in Obi-Wan Kenobi basically. But that just the other aesthetics of things, I loved the tanks and the water effects.
Yes.
In this animation style, I thought was really cool. This is one I realized I probably watched half of it without like taking any notes. I was just kind of like enthralled in the visuals and the animation of it. Cause like, yeah, I took notes about like, okay, like, yeah, the smoke is like blotting out the sky, so it's not letting things grow and stuff like that. And then like the next thing I have is basically like, oh, like badass fight scene, and then taking down the tanks to like flood everything. So yeah, like ultimately I think of the three, this is probably overall my favorite, even if I probably like the art style of the first one a little bit more. I thought it had like a more unique and look to it and feel to it. But I did really enjoy this one, and I'm a sucker for this kind of stop motion animation style, I think. Because it's not something we get to see all that often anymore. Especially if it's not a Guillermo del Toro joint or something like that, or a Tim Burton joint. So getting to see kind of another studio's approach to the animation on this, and then also again that interesting dichotomy of like, okay, like the brunt of this is going to be this stop motion animation, but here's also this cool 2D animation art style of the paintings on the stone to kind of tell the backstory and kind of fill in any of the crucial details you need to know. It gave me vibes of the fact is maybe a weird pull, but Coco being a like CG Pixar film, but then like in the opening we get the backstory told through like the hanging banners in 2D. It was that same kind of vibe to it for me. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one, even if I hate the archetype of the Tachina child. And like, I also like wish it had been just made abundantly clear that she doesn't have the Force or something like that. Like, and it's just her older sister that was able to save the day. But alas, she gets her little, I'm going to do the Force moment as well, which I have been using for the image for this segment of the show anyway. So yeah, those are my thoughts on it. Logan, what do you think of this one?
It's my favorite one as well. I mean, for a lot of the same reasons you just said, right? I am also a huge sucker for stop motion animation. It's just something that I love. And like claymation animation. I mean, going back to like the old like 60s and 70s like Christmas like
Bass, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, kind of thing. Like those are what I think of when I think of like the Christmas movies I would watch as a kid, right? And like even like the image I have like of Santa Claus is like from like those Santa Claus kind of movies. And so like I've always just really loved it. But even like the sort of like arc of this story is one that is like designed to appeal to Logan, right? And so like, this like reluctant like hero who's drawn in because of like some sort of like family drama or some sort of like crisis of faith that she has to step up and like deliver, and she does, and then like the world is saved, and like there's obviously a very very on the nose environmental message in this one as well, and like I love that, and like it is just like sort of appealing to a lot of different aspects of like my thing, but then also like it's just a very Star Wars story, I think, right? Like not one necessarily about like Jedi and Sith, but just about like there's like a very clearly designed good and bad here. And in a 15-minute fable, you get kind of that story played out, and it's very, for the second episode, I guess I'm going to say it's very like New Hope-y, I think, but like actually good New Hope and not like the bad New Hope like we had in the last episode, right? And so like it is just like this kind of random, again, like farm girl villager, who steps up and like faces off against the Empire, right? And I think that's really cool. There's also like an element of like, while watching it and while like talking about it, I just kept thinking of like Andor, right? And like the crash that like poisoned that planet, like, oh, like this could have been like what happened while he left kind of thing. And so, yeah, like I really liked it, right? It seems like Cameron probably likes it a little bit less, but like, yeah, it was my favorite. I think, the first one had a lot of promise, and the second one, I really liked, but like this is the one that I think sort of married all the elements together for me in terms of both animation, in terms of both like the overarching story, and in terms of the characters that like really delivered the most for me, the first three.
All right, Cameron, what'd you think of this one?
least favorite, but not by like
Yeah.
a large
Yeah.
amount. I think that the overall like the art style did like it took me a hot minute to get into it. I felt like, and then so that was the first thing that I didn't like, and then the second thing I didn't like was the little girl. Everything else I actually felt was fantastic. I think the water effects were phenomenal. I felt like like the actual character designs themselves, the idea of the masks, the idea of kind of like this naturalistic kind of technology and tools and everything being used by the two main girls was really great, especially up against kind of like this like very bland fascist looking like cold metallic feel to everything, especially like this like mother superior imperial officer with her like bonnet built into her cap, like was great. Loved the reaction like, I thought we killed them all, and it's like, oh my gosh, okay. Like, yes, this is very much like a like anti-colonial anti-colonist type move episode we're watching here, and I dig that. I dug when we see the chicken walker come out, and it's like, what's the big bad of this? The chicken walker. It's like, I like that they're pointing out, hey, regular people have died of these things all the time.
Mm-hmm.
These things are dangerous. And I also enjoyed that the thing about that, what brought it all down was the water itself, was breaking down the water, freeing the water, flowed. And it was really cool to see how quickly they were like just reintroducing this clean water back into their ecosystem could make such a massive impact.
Yeah.
It was great. But yeah, overall, I think it was phenomenal. Like top to bottom, I think these 3 episodes back to back, like even though this was my least favorite, it was like it only really gets dragged down by like 2 minor gripes that I have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Logan.
I was just going to touch on like the water too, right? Like one of my favorite, things in stories that I shout out to my like college film teacher I had, right, who talked about like the importance of water in stories and how like water symbolizes change, and like you get a very clear like it washes away everything, right? Like it very like on the nose change, right? And it's one of my favorite things. Always like elbow shrub and watching a movie like water, like it's raining, something's gonna happen, right? It's a big moment here, and so like even just like that kind of symbolic change, right? And the kind of the visual cue of that, and how it just sort of cleanses the earth. I think to Cameron's point, to piggyback off that, right, like I think all 3 of these are really interesting and unique and distinct stories, both visually but also narratively. And hopefully the kind of remaining 6 episodes can be as like I think eclectic as this. We have some fun ones coming up. I was kind of looking. We have like a South Korean studio is going to do one. We have an Indian studio going to do one. A South African one going to do one. And so those I think will be fun to kind of see what stories they can do. Obviously, Lucasfilm is going to do one, but like that's less original. But it's like it'll be fun to kind of see what we get. But like this opening 3 is a really good opening 3, I think, in terms of just like a very distinct visual style in the first episode, kind of a surprise twist in the second one, and then just like a really lovely kind of cap to the opening 3 in this one, I think.
Yeah, I a couple final beats I had for this one. The city design, there was a lot of elements that reminded me of Midgar from Final Fantasy VII, which obviously also ties into the like eco like nature of the story. But then like even the blue glow of the like fresh water had like the eerie green vibe of like the Mako reactors in Final Fantasy. And then to piggyback on your like water means change kind of thing, I immediately then start thinking of like, yeah, I mean, this ending is basically the ending of the Two Towers. It's the all of the water coming in and taking out Saruman's it's them breaking the dam. So that's now the other image I have in my head. But yeah, I agree. I think I love that they did a second season of Visions. As much as like there were elements like from that first season of like, I would love to see a couple of these like fleshed out just into their own stories. That would be cool in and of itself. But I also love this idea of, hey, let's take that same anthology spirit and and let's make it a global affair, and let's go
Right.
to animation studios around the world and say like, hey, take 15 minutes and do what you want. Tell a Star Wars story and tell what that means to you. And so, yeah, I love that. Like, we continue to get these. I very much look forward to seeing what the rest of them, especially like the visual and art style of Wallace and Gromit is easily identifiable and recognizable, but also the only movie of theirs I've ever really watched was Chicken Run. I've never seen any of the Wallace and Gromit proper stuff.
Oh, really? They're really
have
good.
you not?
Yeah,
They're better
no,
than
they're
Chicken
bad.
Run.
Oh, they're
by
very
a
good,
long
yeah.
shot.
I
Chicken
don't-
Run's not great.
I
so-
don't doubt it. I'm just saying, like in my oeuvre of experience of that animation style, Chicken Run is my touchstone for their animation.
You're in for a treat.
So yeah, I look forward to like what they're bringing to the table next week. And then having seen the trailer, I think just across the board, each of them has some kind of interesting flair to them that, in a way that while all of the Japanese animation of Volume 1 also had kind of their own unique flavor and feel to them, there was still sometimes like a similar visual identity between a couple of them. So I love that this innately is giving us like different feels, different vibes, because it is like, okay, yep, here's one from Madrid, here's one from Chile, here's one from Ireland, going to the UK next, as you said, like South Korea, South Africa. I think it's cool that we're going to get to see just the more different approaches, and more people telling Star Wars stories. I think is always a cool thing. So shout out to that. Go ahead.
I'm not just going to touch on that, right? Like, I think, especially as obviously, I think all of us have largely consumed Western focused content and media just by the nature of being born in America. And Star Wars by the nature of being created by an American and, largely filmed in England. Like, it's just, I think, it's just really cool to see like what other creators can do and see, what other markets versions of Star Wars and like kind of what I think the series means to them and kind of the creativity and culture they have there. I think would just be really fun. And so, I'm very excited to see kind of what the next 6 episodes have.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that what we got to see a Spanish studio, a Chilean studio, and an Irish studio. 3 studios that you would not like pull out of a hat, being like, what are 3 places that have studios of animation that have like
Must
some
see
of them
animation,
long tenure,
right? Yeah.
Or where would you want to pick those out? And those are not the first three places that I would think of. And I loved seeing kind of like each of them have kind of like a touch, like a cultural touchstone. The wide shots of going through it, of like these big rolling hills, like green areas in the second episode. It's like, okay, yeah, no, distinct. Like they know what they're doing with this. And it's like each place felt like it was putting something unique into it.
Yeah.
And it was great.
All right, let's dive into the report card. We grade from A+ to F. Logan, what do you want to give these first 3 episodes?
That's a good question. I'll say a B. I feel happy with a B. Yeah, I'll say a solid B for all 3 of them taken together. I think there's room in the next 6 episodes for me to like be more blown away and love them even more. There's definitely room for me to like them less. And so I think a B is a solid overall ranking for this kind of first trio of episodes.
Cool. How about you, Cam?
I think this is a straight up B+ for me. I don't think any of these hit like the exciting highs of the first 3 episodes of the first volume of Visions did. Where I think that I would say probably when it comes down to it, I think that this is just B+. I think this is a solid starting ground for it.
Right.
I think individually, like they all rank A- to B+ for me. But I think overall it averages out to be a B+.
Cool. I go with a B+ on this. I had a good time with all these. I will say minus. I will give the Disney Plus browser an F
100%.
because I had to like. I don't know what it is, and I couldn't find a consistent fix for this, but watching on a browser, it'll always do the logo and then like into the plus, and then it just stops. And like I would have to click like next episode and then push the back button, and sometimes that would work and I would actually get to watch the episode. So F for how bad the app or how bad the browser is, and I just need to maybe start watching these on like my PlayStation or something like that. But yeah, B plus for the episodes themselves. Good fun time, and definitely cool art styles and visual aesthetics, and visual identities for each of them. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. You have The Mandalorian, you have Star Wars The Bad Batch, Tales of the Jedi, and/or Star Wars The Clone Wars, the series, The Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Zen, Grogu and Dust Bunnies. And I will
just watch Andor 7 times and save yourself the other watches.
Yeah, I will throw out one more there. I think it's like Not So Rogue One story or something like that. It's The Simpsons May the 4th special that they just did.
Maggie, I saw that.
Yeah, I'll shout that out because friend of the show, Ava Enriquez, Ben Bellevue's partner. Yeah, she has been working with Simpsons for a while, and she's pretty much always in the credits of these things, these like little special 3-4 minute one shots that they do on the Simpsons tie in to whatever big special Disney Plus event that they're doing. So yeah, shout out to Ava.
And the Simpsons. Shout out to the Simpsons as well.
And the Simpsons, yeah, sure. I feel like the Simpsons don't really need shout outs. They're doing fine. They're doing just fine on their own.
The most influential animated sitcom of all time. Fair enough, right.
Extracurriculars. Anybody watching anything else on Disney Plus these days?
Technically, I am watching, me and Shabia watch Abbott Elementary. We watch it on Hulu, but I've been told that it comes to Disney Plus later. So technically, I'm watching a Disney Plus show just on a different platform.
I need to. If it's on Disney Plus, I need to start watching.
So apparently, it comes out on Hulu like same day, but then I think I was told that it comes out on Disney Plus like a few days later, from what I was told. So
it might also be it doesn't look. It's probably It's on Disney Plus in other countries, but here in America, it's on Hulu.
Yeah, that's an easy fix. It's called use a VPN. Find out which country you need to do that. That way you avoid Hulu at all costs.
Because yes, I'm not seeing it when I search in Disney Plus. But I don't think I've watched anything else recently. Nothing comes to mind. So,
we watched Princess Bride last week. We've been doing some consistent back-to-back watchings of stuff going on. So
yeah,
I forgot that. Yeah.
Well, we will be back next week with more of these Star Wars Visions episodes. So stay tuned for that. And Frank may be joining us next week as well. He was planning on joining us today, but the day got away from him, so he basically had to back out last minute. But hopefully we'll get the full Summer of Star Wars crew back together next week. So that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, everybody, for joining me to discuss Star Wars Visions Volume 2, Part 1. These 3 episodes. You can follow Logan at LeftyLogie, LOGGY. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Logan?
Yes. Shout out to Cameron and Trevor doing their Let's Plays of Elden Ring. I really enjoy, I don't know if it's Cameron, I don't know if it's Trevor, a mixture of the two of you. I really enjoy the tweets that come out of it, if nothing else. They're very funny. I enjoy Cameron Abbott and Trevor Starkey so incredibly much. I can't even put into words how much I love these two people, but especially them doing literally anything together. They're just they're a modern day Abbott and Costello. They're great. And yeah, I love their energy. I love their dynamic, especially when things go to shit, as is, happens in Elden Ring.
Indeed. Yeah. It's funny that, my tweet this week was the pendulum swings from we one-shot an enemy to we go through and just die and die and die and die again.
Mm-hmm.
We'd been on the one-shotting enemies for a while, and then we recorded another episode that night, and it went the completely other way. So that'll be next week's episode, so stay tuned for that. I guess I jinxed it with that tweet. We'd been on a good run of just like taking bosses out one by one. That the game was like, no more for you. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
I want to give a massive shout out to our kind of a concurrent. I'll just say Jafo, Jedi Fallen Order. Go watch those. I put time and effort into those. They were a lot of fun. New episodes are still coming out. Did I time it poorly with Jedi Survivor? Yes, but they're coming out nonetheless. So go watch them. Its most recent episode, I think, is the one where it was the water temple.
You gave me that as like your tweet on it, and I was like, I have no idea what this means. I don't remember this I don't remember what a water temple about that game is, so I'm just gonna go with whatever his tweet is about. But
it's the one where the temple's like half submerged in water, and all the puzzles have to do with navigating around water.
Okay.
I don't remember that at all. I mean, I definitely believe you. I don't remember that at all.
I think it's because people anticipate when you say water temple, they think like, oh, it's one where you're underwater the entire time. But that's not what this is in reference to. It's the fact that like this place is like a half submerged ruined temple, and half the stuff is about like how do I get around like the fact that like water's now like ruined this entire area.
To your point there, Logan, about like who creates the tweets. For those, Cameron usually gives me his copy, but for this one, it was like. Somebody once said every game needs a water level, and I was like, I was like, who said that, Cam? Who would have said that? He's like, I don't know, probably somebody. And I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna put a little asterisk in there and say probably somebody said that. So that was my contribution to
I either
that
read
tweet.
it somewhere or I heard it somewhere in some podcast. I don't know.
I don't think you did. I don't think anybody has ever said every game needs a water level.
In fact, I would assume people have said the opposite more often than not.
Indeed. Like there was a tweet that I'm pretty sure you tweeted.
Oh, I did about how we need no more
retweeted.
water temples. Yes.
Yeah.
And was this inspired by that? Yes, 100%.
There you go. Yeah.
My belief that we no longer need water temples was 100% inspired by this past episode. So,
well, you can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey on Twitter. I will echo those shout outs. I will also shout out the Breath of the Wild replay series that I've been doing. This most recent episode had me running into the Yiga clan. And as I tweeted out, I always hate when a non-stealth game forces you into stealth section and just you realize how bad that game is at stealth. And that's what the Yiga temple or Yiga clan is in Breath of the Wild. So, and I didn't time it out as poorly as Cameron did. So all of my stuff will be coming out, including a couple of bonus episodes this weekend. So stay tuned for those. But basically we'll have everything lead up to Tears of the Kingdom's release, with me killing Ganon basically like right before that goes live. Spoilers. That's what it was all building towards. So yeah, go check out all that. And also you can go check out that Nerdy Site show where you can hear more of Cameron's thoughts on Jedi Survivor from this week, as well as my thoughts on the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, class dismissed, and may the 4th be with you.
And also with you.